especially when we talk about digital marketing, whether or not you do influencer marketing or affiliate marketing, I think your brand loyalty starts inside first, and making sure that you're designing your brand around what you truly believe as a company and how you truly operate. I think that's the first step in any successful brand refresh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Wisenetix Podcast episode. I'm very happy to have here with me today Ariana Bigham. She is going to share a little bit about her experience as a global marketing specialist at Datamars Livestock, and we're going to talk a lot about branding and digital marketing. Ariana, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Ariana, the way we like to start our conversations is, with a quick background on our guest speakers, just so our audience can learn a little bit more about you.
So my husband and I, we have a cow-calf operation that we run with my in-laws in the Texas Panhandle. So I live and breathe ag every day. It's what I've grown up around. It's what I always knew I wanted to be involved in. When I went to school, I got my degrees in ag communications and then moved into marketing. And I just found my niche. This is what I love. It's in the industry that I love, and I love what I do every day. So I consider myself pretty lucky.
Awesome. I love to see how many people that comes to the podcast, they do work in marketing or in sales or any areas in the industry, but how they have this passion for ag before their jobs and their roles. How agriculture is something that is part of their lives. Not for everyone, but lots of people that are working and making the industry happen. So that's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. We love it. There's no other way we'd raise our family than on the ranch. We have a 4-year-old son, and when I clock off at the end of marketing every day, we get on the 4-wheeler and we go out and check cows in pasture, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Absolutely. It's not part, I live in the city. It's not part of my routine, but it's definitely something I'm considering for my future. It looks cool, and I don't know, just a different base, other things to look at instead of buildings and concrete. So it's something that it's calling my attention. Ariana, next question I have for you, just so we learn a little bit more about you, is what would you highlight as your top experiences in life, your top 3 experiences, and what did you learn from those?
I would say probably the first is kind of a personal and professional achievement. When I went to grad school, I did my master's thesis on persuasive communication, and I won outstanding master's thesis in 2018. And it was really a lesson for me about perseverance and accepting criticism, which I think we're all used to in marketing. There's always 1,000 edits, 1,000 different viewpoints, 1,000 different ideas about which platform we should be engaging on, what our content should look like. So that shaped me quite a lot into being more adaptable and just able to work with people of different backgrounds and different opinions. When I had my son in 2020, of course, my whole world changed. It was amazing, incredible. But, starting to achieve a balance between work and life and what that looks like also when we have a ranch on the side, and my husband manages cows for another farm here in the area full time. So our ranch is definitely our second full-time job for both of us. So just learning how to manage that balance. I also started working from home full-time in August of 2020. So it's been just about 4 years now. And so that's been a big transition, a big change, but a welcome change. It helps me to achieve that work-life balance that's super important to me. And then I would say the last one actually just happened a couple months ago. My husband and I went on a mission trip to Guatemala. It was my first time definitely to a country where I didn't speak the language. I've been to Canada once before, but that's it's very similar to the US. So this was quite a stretch, and it was incredible. I can't wait to to go on another one. Just what I think I took from that most of all was just perspective, being able to see and, just see the beauty in different cultures and different ways of life. It was incredible. And, it's funny because I get to talk to people around the world every day at work, but it's a completely different experience when you're there and, you get to experience the country and the culture firsthand. It's amazing.
It's a nice exercise, right? You work with marketing, you need to see with other people's eyes, think, try to think, you put yourself on their shoes. So that's definitely something to, help you creating and yeah, increasing, if that's the right word for empathy. But yeah, like creating more empathy and, you know, just practicing that. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And how about your kid, him or her? Sorry,
Yeah, it's a boy. His name's
it's a
Jayton.
boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys planning to have him helping you guys in the ranch already, or what?
Oh yes, he is. He's already full time ranch hand around here. He wants to be a little more involved than maybe we want him to be right now. He's ready to drive the four-wheelers and the tractors by himself, and this mama heart's not quite ready for that yet. He's just 4 and just starting pre-K, so he loves it. He would be out there with the cows all day, every day if we let him. So yeah, it's really neat to know that we get to be involved in ag every day. Even on a smaller scale, we just love it. My husband grew up farming, and then we transitioned to cattle. Um, and yeah, it's an awesome way to raise a family and just to see him develop the same love for the land and the livestock that we have has been an awesome journey.
That's lovely. That's lovely. And I'm bet it's a great environment to raise a child. Awesome. Next question is a question that I always ask as well. The first three are always standard, and it's a part in our conversations when we transition to our business and marketing and communication conversation. And the question is, how would your parents describe what you do today?
I've actually talked to my parents about this recently. And it's funny because I don't know if they know quite what I do on a day-to-day basis, but I don't think my husband knows what I do on a day-to-day basis either, and we talk about it every day. So it's funny because, a lot of times from the outside looking in, there's so many aspects to marketing it's hard to describe. And it's hard to describe, especially when you're in a position where you're involved in a lot of those aspects. You're not just a social media coordinator or just a brand strategist or just a packaging specialist. Especially in ag, there's a lot of times where our roles require a lot of different specialities from us. So one day we might be doing PR, and the next day we might be doing advertising, and the day after we might be working on a social media campaign. So I think it is hard for people to describe it. But when I was talking with my parents, my dad really surprised me with his answer. I thought it was really neat because he said, I feed the world. And I'd never thought of it like that before. And he said, I remember when you were about 13, he said, your ambitious goal was to feed the world. And he said, this is your way of doing that by helping, get quality tools in the hands of farmers and ranchers to help them farm more efficiently and more sustainably and just help them, in their day-to-day lives. And I thought that was a really neat answer because, at the end of the day, that is my passion. That's why we're involved in ag and why we, spend our evenings and our weekends tending the land ourselves. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. And then my mom, she's like, oh, you're just the bomb at marketing. So I think moms are always our biggest fans. So that was fun to have that conversation with them.
I loved it. You have the Brotherville, the ultimate goal, getting people fed and getting food in their plates, and then the marketing hero. And Ariana, the first time we met, we had the opportunity to talk a little bit, and you shared some information on your background, especially when it comes to branding. And that's what we're going to be discussing here today. We have a few questions that we want to cover. And for us to start, share with us a little bit your background on branding and brand strategy.
Yeah, of course. So, I joined True Test in 2018, and we were acquired by Datamars during that same year. And so, throughout a lot of those acquisitions, we had some product portfolios with competing products. So, my first experience with brand strategy was really looking at those product portfolios and the customers that we were serving with each portfolio, and look at which brand it made the most sense for those products to fall under, now that we had quite an extensive range and several brands, and just look at that segmentation to see um, which brand would best suit which channel and which avenue. And so that was kind of my first experience with brand strategy outside of just execution in regional marketing. And then I joined the global marketing team in 22. And when I joined, we had introduced Datamars Livestock about 2 years previously. So we introduced Datamars Livestock in March of 2020. And as we all know, COVID happened and it changed the landscape on a lot of things. So when I joined the global team, my my manager and I were looking at Datamars Livestock, which was our umbrella brand. It was our ecosystem brand responsible for kind of uniting all of these portfolios. And we looked at it and we decided that it was time to consider a refresh of that brand. It was really important for us to leverage the equity that we had in the product brands, in the tools that our farmers and ranchers use every day, in the brands that they see at the retail shelves, that we leverage that to help build the equity in Datamars Livestock. And our visual identity, um, really our brand identity as a whole, didn't quite do that for us. So we started a brand refresh project in 22, and I managed that project, and I managed our stakeholders along that journey. And then we introduced that refresh in June of 23. So that was quite a large, a large scale project across all of our different regions, kind of my first big project on the global team. And it was challenging. The best way to consider brand strategy when you have product brands that have been used and relied on for over 100 years in this industry, and then creating a new ecosystem brand from scratch, and kind of the best way to leverage the equity that you have, but also to create a new identity, which is, we are a portfolio of solutions that work together to help you do your job. We're not just this product or this product. So it's been really an interesting journey. I found that I love brand strategy, and I've really enjoyed the projects that I've gotten to work on in my tenure at Datamars. It's been really interesting.
That's great. Brand is also one of my passions. I actually got involved here at Wisenetix about 3 years and a half ago, or yeah, early 2021. Yeah, that's right. And I got involved in the company through a branding project, a rebranding. We had a portfolio of products in Brazil, just starting in the United States, and then each brand had their own communication. Uh, I cannot say identity. There was a lack of identity at the end, right? And I was responsible basically for getting everything under the same umbrella, making those brands communicate one to the other, and just create the whole identity. And it was my first project, not my first project in branding, but my first project leading the whole process, right? And before, I had previous experiences in different areas within branding, mostly in visual identity. I'm a designer by formation, and so it's interesting to see like the complexity of a branding project when you are leading one, just like you did. We, as a designer, in my, I don't know, a few years ago, I used to have an idea of the whole branding um, process as something much more like aligned with the visuals, because I was a designer. Okay, it's about the colors, it's about the logo, but at the end of the day, you're basically creating or adjusting a personality, right? It involves much more than that. And you need to think and strategize, okay, who are the stakeholders? How do I communicate to each one of them? And I will communicate maybe differently, but still I need to have some identity that connects me, connects the different faces that my brand has. So you involved in this project, that's just a few of my thoughts that I had on have on brand. But you involved in this project, you guys had all this portfolio, you had brand equity, you had a value that was perceived on the products, and then you had to bring this value, this equity, those perceptions to Datamars livestock. What are the most important things you need to consider when you're doing such a project, and when you're changing a brand or coming up with a new brand, adjusting a brand?
It is quite an interesting journey, and I really like what you mentioned because it is a personality. And I think that that's why brand is as fun as it is and can be as challenging as it is, because it can be really personal for each person that's involved, for each group of stakeholders. So I think, what helped me the most was, number one, it's pretty common sense, but I think it's something that's really important to lay out as a priority on paper, like throughout the process, is just keeping the customer at the center of every decision that you're making with regard to brand. Because there are always different opinions about visual identity, about online identity, about how we activate our brand strategy. And I think it's sometimes easy to get caught up in the excitement around, oh, we're going to refresh this, we're going to create something new and something exciting, we have all of this value to offer our customers. But it's important to remember, how the customer is going to receive any changes as well, what it's going to look like, at the retail shelf, or what it's going to look like in the packaging that they open when they're, you know setting up an electric fence, or just making sure that you are truly keeping each touch point in mind, because brand really does impact all of those things. Brand should be at the center of your customer journey. So any of those changes, you really need to make with the customer at heart, not just what you and your business objectives want to see from the brand. I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I really identified what you just said. Like in branding, brand strategy, we work with a lot of common sense or simple concepts. The challenge is putting them into action and keeping consistency. As I said, okay, yeah, having the customer on the center of your decision making, centered, user centered design, user centered everything that we do, thinking about our customers. Yeah, it's logic, it's obvious, but on a daily basis, making that happen when you have a whole portfolio of products, features you need to take care of, things you want to implement, all sorts of challenges that appear in our daily basis, keeping in mind the customer when you're making a decision, and make sure that what you're doing is the best for them. And at the same time, it's not only doing something that is the best of them, but the best for them, but also it needs to be sustainable. You need to have the resources to do what you want. You need to, at the end of the day, you need to be profitable, right? So although we work with some simple concepts, putting them in practice, when you're executing a branding project, or even when you're maintaining your brand health throughout your the company's life, that's the biggest challenge for me. It's how to work those simple concepts.
And I think it gets challenging too when, there's a lot of variety in the customers that you serve. When you look at each one of our brands, we have a target customer for each one of our product brands. And then we have a target customer for our ecosystem and our software solutions. So there's a lot of variety in those customers. But we're also a manufacturer. So we have our B2C audience and we have our B2B audience. So when you think about brand from that perspective, both of those different segments require different things. And so again, just like you said, it's simple to think about. It's easy to it's an easy concept to consider. But when you look at execution, it does become a bit more challenging. And I think that leads into the second thing that I think is really important, which is measure early and measure often. So when you look at changing something in a brand, um, I really like the way that my manager says this. She says it's an evolution, not a revolution. So this is going to be kind of a, most of the time it's a rolling change. There's going to be time to do some testing, to run new ideas or different channels, different avenues for visual identity past your stakeholders. You can engage with them and give them a voice, make sure that they're part of the process with you. And ideally, if you have access to do some external research, to do some A/B testing or something, that would be ideal. But a lot of times, especially in ag, um, we sometimes have to just rely on our internal feedback too. And so I think that whatever tools you have in your toolbox, whether that's formal external research or just internal feedback, I think it's really important that you have those milestones marked out from the beginning, so that you're continuously checking in with your stakeholders and making sure that the progress that you're making incrementally along the way is heading in the right direction.
I just loved what you just said, what you brought on the second point, like measure often. That's something. How, and that's a wild card question. Um, how do you see this? How do you see measuring when it comes to branding? You mentioned, the feedback and everything. Can you give us some examples on how you measure the impact or the perception of the brand, or how you did throughout your process?
I'll have to say this is not necessarily the area, my particular area of expertise, but I know that there's, just in the world of digital marketing, there's so many tools at our disposal. The digital agency that we work with out of New Zealand, they kind of have their own algorithm to measure brand health, and of course, it's over a period of time, and they look at a lot of different digital metrics to kind of input into this overall brand health measurement. I think a lot of digital agencies probably have their own metrics that they would use to feed into that. But it could even be something as simple as, if you're considering a change of voice, of brand voice, you can do some A/B testing on social to see how it resonates with your audience, or you can try out some. If all you've ever done is really well polished, um, you know, like top of the line voiceover brand anthem long form type videos, and you're looking to try to make your brand a little more modern, a little more fresh, you can try out some short form content. You can look at, you can hire on an influencer for a few months and kind of gauge how that goes. There's just so many tools at our disposal now, with the wider world of digital marketing. I think that there's a million ways that you could test and you could measure externally and internally. One of the things that we did was, across workshops, brand voice was really important to us. It was an area that we saw an opportunity to improve. So one of the things that we did with some internal groups is just taking them through a few voice exercises and getting their feedback about whether tone A resonates better or tone B resonates better, and making sure that we're getting that feedback from the people you know that are close to the market, whether that's sales or marketing. These people are around our customers every day, so they have the best insight about the way that it's going to resonate, just based on the conversations they have with our customers in their day-to-day operations. So that's one of the things that we did. I definitely don't have kind of a one size fits all answer, but there's just a lot of tools out there that can be used, and I would say use as many as is realistic.
I like your perspective of bringing this process as something as, evolution, not a revolution, and the importance of those tests and validations throughout the way. Otherwise, you put a lot of effort on a big project that, in theory, it makes sense, and you test in the market, it's not the best idea. You should go through some validation steps throughout the way. So I think it's a very interesting perspective. And every time this is more frequent with new methodologies, design methodologies, and it's nice to see this being incorporated also when it comes to branding. And you also mentioned digital marketing. That's something I want to touch on. Just before we jump to that, my last question is, how do you effectively implement a change in brand strategy or positioning?
I think it's important to get your internal team on board first, because brand, I think sometimes we think about brand, and just like you said, we think about the logo or the fonts or the colors that we use, our visual identity on our website. But brand is so much more than that. It's the way that we do business. It's the values that we stand for as a company. It's at the heart of how we lead every customer interaction. So it's important to get your internal stakeholders on board first before you ever think about how to take the brand external. So making sure that you're giving them a voice, you're giving them a place to provide feedback, and taking them on the journey with you. That was really important for us, especially because, given the acquisition history that we have, there was a lot of loyalty to individual companies that now became brands of a larger company. And so we wanted to make sure and capitalize on that loyalty, and to let those legacy brands know, you know, this legacy is important, and it's important to us moving forward as well. So really just taking those teams on a journey with us, and letting them know, we intend to build on what your brands have accomplished, what your companies have accomplished over the last, anywhere from 40 to almost 130 years. So I think that's really important, just giving your people a voice in in those decisions, and in that journey, and getting kind of their buy-in first. I think we, especially when we talk about digital marketing, whether or not you do influencer marketing or affiliate marketing, I think your brand loyalty starts inside first, and making sure that you're designing your brand around what you truly believe as a company, and how you truly operate. I think that's the first step in any successful brand refresh.
Buying from the team. Essential, essential. It's much easier to accomplish something when everyone understands and engages with the project instead of being a top-down decision. I've been through a few experiences where in both sides, and I can totally agree the difference. When you have the team on your side, and then they don't only understand why you're making those changes or improving and changing the brand, but also being part of the decisions. And I go beyond of that, not only for branding, but for companies' objectives. When you're setting an objective for a team or anything like that, when they feel part of the decision, it's a totally different world. So I think that's a good note for you guys that are in marketing teams out there, starting to plan your new brands, new projects, and campaigns. Make sure that you listen to your internal stakeholders as well. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about digital marketing. What would you say it's your best advice for companies, brands that are starting in digital marketing today? I think that's a relevant question, especially on a transformation industry. Well, everything is going through transformation, but when we look at the agriculture and the this industry adopting new technologies, that's even more relevant. So please enlighten us.
Yeah, so I think when we look at digital marketing specifically in ag, I think that the assumption we tend to make is that brands or businesses in ag, or even customers in ag, are slow to the adoption of digital marketing. But that's really not what we see. And especially when you look at the technology that farms are using, I mean, and we know this, again, most of the audience here will know this because they're involved in farming themselves. But a lot of our key audiences are innovators. They're early adopters. So this idea of reaching them digitally is not foreign at all. They're here and they've been here. And so I think what's important to consider when you look at where to engage first is to know where your customers are engaging. It's easy to fall into this kind of lure of, oh, here's a new platform, we've got to try it out, we've got to have content there, and we've got to win by being on every platform. And I think that's part of the trick that vanity metrics gives us. I think what's more important is meaningful conversations with your customers and meaningful engagement, especially when you look at all of the digital noise that consumers are faced with every day. The only way to cut through that noise, in my opinion, is to engage meaningfully with your customers. And the first step to doing that is to engage where they're engaging, and then to optimize what you already have. I think that's really important when you're looking at different platforms or even different content types. One type of content isn't necessarily going to be the best for every company or for every brand. But if you find a content type or even a sort of a content pillar that works the best for you and your customers, and you're seeing consistent engagement with it, then you're doing what you need to in terms of optimizing what you know and where your customers are.
One thing that you mentioned, and that's one of the most relevant things when we're thinking about content and digital marketing today, at least on my point of view, is how to break through the noise. Everyone right now is looking at the content, at engaging on digital platforms, and especially in the ag. I had this pre-concept
Mhm.
or preconception about, hey, they are in the agriculture, so are they really consuming content in digital platforms? I had this question on my mind as I went through the branding process at Wisenetix. I was like, no, yeah, they're really consuming the content through digital platforms. And that's something sometimes I hear from customers as well. Like, they are not very secure. Like, hey, are people really using the digital platforms? Are they listening to podcasts? And if you look at not only as, hey, we have a producer, if you look at how many people involved in production systems, how many professions you have, and lots of those are like scientists, they are nutritionists, they are vets, and well, that's a place where they go to get their knowledge and to be updated. So yes, digital is part of everyone's life right now, and that's also a challenge. It's saturated, too many players talking about lots of different things, and then you need to get the attention of your target audience. That's my next question. How do you stay relevant in a world where there's that much noise? How do you do this?
It's definitely not easy. And I think, to your point about our our people in ag being, are they engaging on digital platforms? I think sometimes we get distracted when we look at kind of the average demographics of producers in ag. We see that the average age, of course, I think it's still increasing, but just say between 65 and 70, that may be the average age of the producer, but they've still been using technology for the majority of their careers. And so a lot of them, they may not engage on the platforms that we typically think of when we think of digital marketing. They might still be on Facebook, or a lot of them are definitely on YouTube. So these may not be the TikTokers that we see Gen Z engaging on so heavily. But I think that's why it's important. Again, we talk about staying relevant. First is be on the right platforms. When you look at how your audience is engaging, look at what they're already doing. So, farmers, for example, or ranchers like my husband, they get on YouTube a lot for the how-to stuff. They're looking for information, they're looking for value added. So is it going to necessarily be a short viral TikTok that's hilarious and gets millions of views? Maybe not. but is it going to be something that's incredibly relevant and incredibly useful? And for the people that are searching for your content, is that going to, lead them to consume more? Absolutely. And so I think that that's how you stay relevant too, is you've got to keep your ear on the ground, and you've got to know what types of content are working, and what types of content your customers are engaging with. And a lot of times, you don't have to have extravagant tools, especially if you're first getting started. Social listening is an incredible tool, but if you're just getting started and you don't necessarily have the budget for that, you can rely on your internal experts as well. The conversations that they're having when they step on farm to talk about new technology, those are content topics. Those are the how to's. Those are the LinkedIn articles that your farmers and ranchers are looking for anyway, because they're looking for that information from their sources, their expert sources, which are the salespeople in their lives, the nutritionists, the veterinarians, the consultants, the farmer down the road. When they go to the co-op at 6 o'clock in the morning and have a cup of coffee, and they're all talking about when they're going to start planting cotton. Those are the kinds of conversations they're going to be looking for online too. So when you have that insight, use that to help inform your content, and it'll really help in terms of relevancy.
A sales team is always, not always, but most of the times, a great connection. They are in front of the customer, so they know what they're discussing, and that's a great way for you to catch some topics and things to explore when it comes to content.
Absolutely.
So we talked about brand, we talked about digital marketing. All those things are, a change in brand strategy, adoption to new technologies. All those things can also impact management. I wanted if you can share a little bit with us, what's your experience with these changes within the management in a company that comes, through all these things that we just discussed.
Yeah, so I think change management is an important consideration, with brands, with digital marketing, with anything new in a company. So my experience with change management has just been that I've lived it. So I've been with Datamars for 6.5 years. Um, in that time, I've held 4 different roles, and I've had seven different managers. So since we've grown so much, both through acquisitions and through organic growth, there's a lot of change that comes with growth, especially that much growth in a short amount of time. So I would say that that's my background. Is I've just lived it. I've had to learn how to adapt with it. And I think that there's a lot of lessons that can be taken from change management and applied to all areas of marketing, really, because anytime you try something new, whether it's, something simple, it's a different piece of content, or something as drastic as a brand refresh, at the core is some change management principles that, if you can apply those, it helps that change not feel so abrupt, not feel so drastic. So I would say that that's my experience with change management. I think the brand refresh project was largely an exercise in change management. Again, you're working with teams from all over the world that have different levels of equity in these product brands, that also have different levels of equity in Datamars Livestock, the brand that we're actively doing a refresh on. So getting them all to the table and getting us all going in the same direction in terms of brand strategy was a big change management project. I think with these legacy brands and the loyalty around them, just engaging with those stakeholders often was really important, to let them know what we were thinking, the direction that we were headed, getting their feedback on that direction, and helping them be involved in the journey, like we were talking about earlier. That really helps with change, because change can be scary, change can be unpredictable, but when you break it down and it's incremental and you take the team on the journey with you, it's a lot easier to digest.
Okay, and do you see this? approach being applied as to the business as well, the business as a whole. For example, how what advice would you give to people that are going through these changes in business? How do they navigate through these changes in business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, change is inevitable. So don't fight it. Try to embrace it because with change comes growth. And if you can be adaptable and flexible and be open to the opportunities it brings, I think that really just can open a lot of doors to you. So whether you're looking at opportunities for teams to grow or you're looking at individual growth, change gives you that opportunity if you see it as a journey to go on rather than an obstacle to overcome. I think a lot of times when we think about change within business, it's a problem to solve. And when we just look at it as a problem to solve or kind of this hurdle to overcome, we miss a lot of opportunities to grow and stretch in different ways. And I think that kind of naturally leads to different avenues, whether that's in marketing or just in professional development. There's a lot of opportunity there if you can just kind of have that open mindset and know, change is always going to be a constant. So welcoming it, adapting to it, and growing through it would be my best advice.
Perfect. Embrace the change. And as you just said, like there's no growth without change, right? You need to. Um, Ariana, I just want to say thank you for the conversation. It was really good to talk to you about the brand, about Datamars livestock, about all the work that you guys have been doing. My last question is actually, where can our listeners find you online in case they want to connect?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I would say, reach out on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. If you're interested in what Datamars Livestock is doing, we've recently launched a showcase page for our livestock business on LinkedIn as well. So you can follow our corporate page, Datamars, and follow our showcase page, Datamars Livestock. So we would love to connect with you and get to know you guys better.
Perfect. And for you, our listeners that are out there in the world listening to our cool conversations, thank you for your company. Thank you for staying with us for another great conversation. And I hope to see you again in our next episode. Thanks, Ariana, and bye to everyone.
Thank you.